This is really cool, and I hope these actually come out. This is a concept design right now from ASUS. That's an SSD installed in a graphics card. Now, why do I think that's so cool? Well, for one thing, just it's nice to see some sort of innovation in the space at all, um, especially given people's not super excited about what's currently happening just from a performance perspective. More on that in a minute. But why would you want an SSD installed in your graphics card? Well, there's a lot of unused PCIe lanes on the lower end graphics card, so maybe you could do something with them. It'd be better to gain an SSD slot than to just not gain an SSD slot. Also, a lot of times graphics cards block the M.2 connector on your motherboard. This might be more convenient, that sort of a thing. Now, I was curious about the heat, but that did get looked at here. And didn't seem to cause any major performance issues or anything like this. Now, I found this in an article from videocards.com, and all my sources for everything I discuss in today's video will be linked in the video description. However, if you are hoping that this will take your 8 gigabyte graphics card up an extra 2 terabytes of VRAM, that is not what that is doing. That would just operate as a normal just SSD in your computer that just happens to connect to your GPU. It would not be increasing the VRAM buffer by 2 terabytes, just so we're clear on that. Now, again, I think maybe this is a silver lining of people not being super excited about the latest graphics cards from a performance standpoint, that maybe the board partners will start innovating on some new designs, things like that. We've seen a lot of them trying to hide power connectors in the back more now, things like that. Maybe we'll get some SSD slots on them. But in general, yeah, we're seeing reports of not a lot of people lining up to buy an RTX 4060. If I wanted to buy one right now as we speak, I can look at PC Part Picker, which surveys a bunch of major online retailers, and you can buy them at MSRP right now from a whole bunch of models a couple days after launch. So certainly pointing to signs that this was not some kind of massive sellout that people got super excited about. Which then makes it feel a little bit weird that we're seeing this. This is leaked from Hardware Lux, if you couldn't notice that. But there's Ada Lovelace next here lined up with the year 2025. So that's the main thing we're focusing on this. So again, this is a leak rumor. This is not official. But allegedly, this is an Nvidia, generational plan, right? This slide. And what we're seeing here once again is the Ada Lovelace next 2025. Why is that interesting? Well, normally we get a new GPU architecture launch every 2 years. So we would expect, 30 series at the end of 2020, 40 series launched at the end of 2022. And then we would have expected end of 2024 for the next consumer graphics cards from generation coming from Nvidia. But again, if this ends up being true, this looks to line it up more with 2025. However, that doesn't necessarily mean, first of all, this is true, but also even if this is true, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a full year delay, because we have usually got these cards at the end of the year. So maybe this is a slip from like Q4 of 2024 into Q1 of 2025, something like that. I don't know, but I'm sure people wouldn't be super excited. If we're not excited by this generational uplift, it might be coming as a disappointment if we're going to have to wait even longer for replacements. Although perhaps, and now this is just pure speculation on my part, perhaps putting some extra time gap here could mean they could fit in a super series, maybe with extra VRAM. Could you redesign this with a larger bus and 12 gigabytes of VRAM, something like that? I don't know, that's pure speculation. More pure speculation on my part. I don't know if I should even get into this in this video. I was gonna talk this in another one, but okay, so there's been a lot of the people talking about how, the 4060 probably should have been called a 4050 if you actually look at its die size and all of that, right? And you could argue that all along the product stack. So is Nvidia intentionally kind of sandbagging the 40 series? And the reason why I'm bringing up that up in this context is that could make it easier to deliver a more exciting generation when this eventually launches in 2025. Now, Does that mean Nvidia will deliver a more exciting generational uplift? I don't know, but if your previous generation wasn't very big of an uplift, it does make it easier for your next generation to be a larger uplift generationally. So, and they might have already realized that the 40 series maybe wasn't going to sell well anyway because of how much 30 series was produced during the crypto boom and then those all becoming available as used GPUs. In other words, maybe NVIDIA's plan here, also I think NVIDIA had an easier time, like NVIDIA could have so easily offered a massive generational uplift, again, if this had been called a 4050, if the 4060 Ti had been more like the actual 4060, you see what I'm saying? Because I think they had an easy time moving from the Samsung 8 nanometer process to the TSMC 4N process. They got such a big efficiency jump from that that I think rather than delivering that to the customer, although I'm sure there were higher prices involved on that and all that for them as well, but rather than just deliver that massive jump to the customer, they instead shifted the whole product stack and then give us a meager bump along with the new feature of DLSS 3 frame generation to try to catch some people with that feature, maybe the fear of missing out, that kind of a thing. So in other words, I feel like this is where they could have delivered very easily a massive uplift and instead chose not to. Maybe that will make it easier for the next generation to be a little bit more exciting because they won't have the advantage of moving from like a Samsung 8 nanometer to the TSMC 4N. Like, I don't think you're gonna get that big of a node bump in performance that they did this time around, but we didn't benefit from. Maybe they're stretching out their gains if they actually are concerned about the whole Moore's Law slowing down kind of business. Maybe they kind of are sacrificing a bit of the 40 series generational uplift to make it easier to give more of an uplift the next one. I don't know. I'm just kind of in speculation mode at this point. Let's move on. We do have an NVIDIA keynote announced for SIGGRAPH coming on August 8th, although their information about this doesn't seem to be talking about gaming GPUs or anything like that. It seems to be more AI focused. So probably won't hear anything too exciting there. Now, in interesting hardware news from AMD, we are apparently getting, as I reported, a leak on a week or so ago, whenever that was. Apparently it's real. There is a 5600X3D launching on July 7th for $229 at Micro Center only. Now, I have a lot of thoughts about this. I'll try to keep them brief. First of all, wow, that's really soon. Second of all, it's only at Micro Center, so this doesn't benefit most of the world or even most of the United States. I live in the United States. I can't get to a Micro Center in less than, I don't even know how many hours it is, like 7-hour drive, 8-hour drive, it might even be more than that, 9-hour drive, I don't know. There's not a Micro Center in every state even, let alone one in every major city or anything like that. So the reasoning behind this is that apparently these are just 5800X3D chips that were defective, so they couldn't actually operate all 8 cores or whatever. So rather than throw them away, AMD is going to launch them, but there's such limited supply because I guess there weren't very many defective 5800X3Ds that they're only going to launch them at Micro Center because there just wouldn't be enough to distribute at lots of retailers. And I guess in some ways it's kind of nice to see them support an actual PC-focused brick-and-mortar store rather than just some, throw them up on Amazon or something like that. So that's at least cool. Now, my thought on the price, though, $229. That's, I don't know. You can get a I already have PC part picker up here, right? Let's jump in here. I have some kind of random build in here, apparently. A lot of times I'm thinking about what I would build for some price. Maybe I should do more videos on those. But anyway, let's go ahead and check out, I think the 5600 non-3D part is only $120 new right now. So that's the 5600G, sorry, $129 new for a 5600. Now, obviously, the 5600X3D is going to be faster. It's going to be in gaming performance more in line with a 5800X3D, which is coming in at around $290 right now. But the thing is, I mean, 209, it feels like, okay, you're on the AM4 platform here, so you're probably not building this new anyway. You're more likely upgrading an old chip, and upgrading to the 5800X3D isn't that much more expensive than the 5600X3D. I feel like I would need a larger price gap there to be very excited about this, especially because the best gaming chip on a given motherboard socket generally holds its resale value better than anything else on the platform, because some people are going to be looking for what is the best gaming CPU I can put in my motherboard, even if it's pretty old at this point, because they're just not going to do a full new rebuild. Which means that from a value perspective, I don't know what I think about this. Again, if you're going super budget and want a good gaming CPU at a low price, and you're on the AM4 platform, again, $129 for a 5600, is it going to be worth $100 more to go up to the X3D part? And if you're already going to be spending that much more, why not just grab the 5800X3D? I don't know. Now, I don't hate this. And also, it being at Micro Center does mean that they are famous for bundle deals and things like that. Anyway, we'll see what happens. I don't know, what do you guys think about this? I think it's good to have this part available. I think it's disappointing that it's going to be limited availability, but I understand why. And I'm just not 100% sure if I feel like this price is low enough. I think like $199 would be a lot more exciting to me, and give more of an argument for why buy this instead of the 5800X3D. Anyway, let's get into some other news that's been blowing up. So I should probably mention, I did a video, where was it? What was this, a week or two ago, talking about a WCCF Tech article, analyzing whether it seems like AMD-sponsored titles, and specifically AMD game-bundled titles, are blocking DLSS implementation. And my biggest point in that video was that WCCF Tech had apparently given them the opportunity to confirm or deny that they do that. And my main point was, there's a lot of evidence here, but none of it's conclusive, but AMD, given the chance to deny it, didn't deny it. Now, I did get some pushback in the comments section saying that, well, WCCF Tech never showed us the question that they asked AMD. So maybe there was some tomfoolery going around there. Well, this is all blowing up even bigger now with the AMD Starfield exclusive PC partner announcement, where the comments are then instantly jumping to a bunch of people being concerned that the game will now not support DLSS. Now, we don't know that. It is not confirmed whether or not the game will or will not support DLSS. And I also want to be clear on my take on this, because again, I got some attack in the comment section. I'm not saying I like what AMD is doing with FSR. I like that it does support all GPU vendors. I think that that is a good and open approach. However, and if a game developer chooses not to implement DLSS, that is their choice. What I don't like is trying to force exclusivity on a feature. In other words, if AMD really is stopping games from implementing DLSS or putting some sort of pressure on them to do that, I don't like that, because it makes the game worse for people who would have had DLSS support. DLSS has been proved to produce better image quality. If you want a support for that statement, you could look at a recent Hardware Unboxed video from a couple months ago, where they did extensive testing in a large number of games and did conclude that FSR doesn't look as good as DLSS. So the game, I think we could agree, would be objectively better for gamers if it includes DLSS. I think in general, the standard for a major AAA PC game release should be to include XeSS, FSR2, and DLSS for major game publishers that have the resources to do so. I understand why maybe a smaller studio who doesn't have as much development time or something like that might focus on FSR only, because it does support everybody and gives some sort of upscaling option, right? But let's not kid ourselves that major AAA game studios couldn't implement all three if they're implementing one. Because once you've implemented one, you've exposed most of the motion vector data and things like that it would take to implement the others, okay? Anyway, Gamers Nexus has now followed up with has now given a very specific question to AMD. So unlike the WCCF Tech article where we didn't get to see the actual question that they asked, Gamers Nexus has, in their most recent hardware news video, asked this very specific question. Does the contract between AMD and Bethesda have any language which intentionally blocks or could be construed as blocking or limiting Bethesda's ability to integrate alternative upscaling technologies within Starfield? I don't think you could ask the question more clearly or directly than that. And if we skip ahead slightly in the video, AMD's response to Gamers Nexus to that question is once again not to deny it. They said, "We have no comment at this time." It would be a very easy PR move for AMD, given that they've seen the reaction to things like that WCCF Tech article as being very negative, to just say, no, we're not blocking it, right? But instead they say we have no comment at this time. So Steve at Gamers Nexus seemed to feel that while this is not confirmation that they are doing so, that it does certainly seem to imply that they are doing the things that he was asking here, because wouldn't you just deny it if you weren't doing it, right? Okay, anyway, so once again, it seems to be that AMD is not confirming they are blocking DLSS, but they're once again, their lack of a denial when directly asked does seem to indicate that they may be doing so. Anyway, I hope that they take this as an opportunity to change their mind on that and have Starfield launch with DLSS support and change their policy on this. I think what AMD is trying to do here is expand the number of games, come back on the list. If you look at lists of games with DLSS or FSR support, right, it's good for them if their number gets bigger faster than the Nvidia one does, all of that. And for Nvidia's sake, of course, they've done shady business deals like this as well in the past. They just don't feel like they need to do that with DLSS because they feel like they have the better technology. It doesn't hurt them to show that off, right, by having competing technologies in the game. So I don't think either company is operating out of the goodness of their heart or anything like that. They're doing what they think is best for them. I think it would be best for AMD to do what's best for gamers, which is to not, again, they don't have to support including DLSS, just don't do anything that could be construed as blocking or limiting Bethesda's ability to integrate an alternative upscaling solution. Again, I believe the standard for PC games should be to have XeSS, FSR2, and DLSS in every major AAA game. Now, in better news for AMD, this is a preview driver. So we'll have to wait for the official full release of this, but this is pointing at a fixed issue. I'm going to zoom in on this. There have been a lot of people pointing out that one of the reasons to avoid getting the RX 7000 series is in VR games. So I have not had a chance to test this out, and I don't currently have any VR headsets to do so, but I'm sure somebody will be testing this out soon. They are claiming that certain, maybe not everyone, right? That was the reported issue, that certain virtual reality games or applications could have suboptimal performance or occasional stuttering on RX 7000 GPUs in particular, and this is now reported as a fixed issue in this driver. Again, I think that needs some testing to confirm it. They're also reporting fixed issues of driver timeouts during playback of AV1 video content using DaVinci Resolve, and improvements to high idle power when using select high resolution and high refresh rate displays on RX 7000 GPUs. Anyway, so I think this is all very good stuff, especially if they could get their VR performance up to snuff. I do know some people are specifically avoiding the 7000 series because they game in VR a lot, and there have been reported issues there. Now, in other driver update news, Intel has new ARC graphics drivers that are claiming some large performance increases in several games, including up to 271% uplift at 1080p very high settings in Assassin's Creed Unity, which is a DX11 game. Again, a lot of the Intel performance issues show up in older versions of DirectX. However, we're also seeing some improvements in some DX12 games, like apparently F122, seeing up to 36% uplift at 1080p high settings, and also some big, but not as big, uplifts at some other settings, and Deathloop, up to 10% uplift at 1080p with ultra settings, 8% at 1440p. So again, it looks like Intel does continue to plug away at driver improvements, offering performance boosts in a variety of new and older games, which is all good to see. Nvidia also has a new driver update. The biggest highlight here is it's just support for the RTX 4060, although there are a few general little fixes available in it as well. Now, videocards.com is pointing out that AMD has failed to launch HYPR-RX on time. Now, if you guys paid attention to AMD's announcement of their 7000 series GPUs, they did make a big deal out of HYPR-RX, which would be a one-click button to enable Radeon Super Resolution, Radeon Boost, and Radeon Anti-Lag in order to improve the performance and responsiveness of games with a click of a button through the drivers. And it was announced as coming in the first half of 2023. Since then, we've heard basically nothing about this, and June just ended. That's the first half of 2023, and we still don't have HYPR-RX. Now, I'm going to be honest, this is not a feature I was very excited about anyway. For example, RSR is just a spatial upscaler like FSR 1.0. You can already enable it through the driver. You would rather use something like FSR 2 if it was available, but not every game has it, so I get it. But again, you can still, all this was just 3 features that you already had, but just bundling them together. At first, I thought it was completely pointless because couldn't you just turn them all on separately? But I guess the actual thing here is that you can't enable them all at the same time currently. For example, RSR doesn't seem to be compatible with Radeon Boost. So the idea here is that you could turn all 3 of them on together with a single button, but just even being able to turn them all together on at all, because previously they were separate and could not all be introduced. Also, this videocards.com article talks about anti-lag as more or less an AMD implementation of Nvidia Reflex, in that they're both designed to cut input lag. While that's true, I don't think they're actually as direct competitors. Reflex operates in a different way than anti-lag does, and I did double check this for this piece. I looked for recent testing of anti-lag versus Reflex, and I did find a piece from Igor's lab about anti-lag versus Reflex and which one cuts down more latency. I'm not going to. I'll link this in the description if you want the full details. If you want to look at one game in particular, for example, Overwatch 2, 1440p. You see the frame rate numbers where turning on Reflex did seem to hurt the 3070 Ti's performance a little bit. Anti-lag, a smaller hit to FPS numbers, but then the latency reduction from Reflex off versus Reflex on did seem to be a much larger decrease in latency than anti-lag off versus anti-lag on. So I don't think they're as direct of competing technologies because I think they operate in different ways. So anti-lag really isn't the same thing as Reflex. Anyway, for all of those reasons, it's disappointing to see that, though, that HYPR-RX is not coming out at its release date. I'd like to hear more about that. What I'm more interested in seeing is FSR 3.0, which was the other big thing that they had been talking about. Now, I'm curious if part of what's going on here is the fact that FSR 3.0 is going to be similar to frame generation, right? Which is adding in those generated frames in between the real frames, which does have a latency penalty. And Reflex is the only thing that's making DLSS 3 frame generation as usable as it is. Now, some people would still argue that it isn't usable or you wouldn't want the increase in latency, but it's always bundled with Nvidia Reflex, which cuts down a lot on that latency. And we can see here that anti-lag, while it does cut down on latency, it doesn't seem to cut it down as dramatically. So I'm wondering if part of what's going on with FSR 3 is trying to get the latency under control. It would be cool if AMD came out with something more like an actual competitor to Reflex, along with their FSR 3 technology. I don't know. Anyway, again, I'm kind of just in speculation mode, but I'd really like to hear from AMD more about FSR 3.0. When are we getting it? What's the slowdown? I get that it's a difficult thing to implement. Anyway, in other news, this is a good time to buy a Steam Deck if you want one, in that there is a sale on them currently. It's looking like you can get the 512 gigabyte model knocked down from $649 to $519.20. The 256 gigabyte model down to $450 from $530, and the 64 gigabyte model down from $400 to $360. So certainly interesting. They are definitely facing more competition from things like the ROG Ally and a whole bunch of others. However, there is something nice about the Steam OS and it operating more like a console and the convenience of a lot of that. I like that I can just turn my games off and they sleep nicely. Windows doesn't always play nicely with that. So I'm still sticking with my Steam Deck for now. My main criticism of it is I don't really like the screen very much. I would like a higher end screen. OLED would be amazing. And certain consoles like the ROG Ally are offering better screens and some better performing hardware, although not as much faster as you might think, just looking at the specs when you actually look at the gaming reviews, all of that. And also, this is a decent time to mention that GPD is unveiling their Win4 2023 console revision with a 7840U or 7640U Phoenix APU inside. And this is, again, reported here at videocards.com. So another competition in this space. This one, I think one of the interesting things that Win4 has going for itself is the slide-up screen with the keyboard underneath, which can be useful for people. If you want a quick summary of these specs, this videocards.com article, which again will be linked in my video description, does have the Steam Deck, ROG Ally, Win4 2023 with the Ryzen 6000, and now the new Ryzen 7000 versions all stacked up here in terms of specs. Again, the Steam Deck now is showing more of its age on its specs, but this really isn't the video to dive into all of those details. Let's go ahead and end with some new cooler models available on some GPUs. There's an RTX 4060 Cute Pet from Yeston, which is a mini ITX graphics card with a unique design that some people might be looking for in their build. We also have Max Sun launching a RTX 4060 Ti iCraft version with a white cooler. I think this might be China only. I'm not 100% sure on that because this is, I think, a Chinese company here. And then we also have some blower style coolers coming out, like the RTX 4070 blower fan version in China from, do you say PNY or do you say Peony? I honestly don't know. Is this Peony? PNY? Anyway, and we do have MSI unveiling the RTX 4090 Aero S with also a blower fan. Now, so why would you want a blower fan on GPUs like this? Aren't those going to perform worse or something like that? I think the idea is in a certain professional environments, you would want blower designs because they're thinner and you'll be able to fit more of them, stacked up together. And you're not having fans blowing heat onto the other GPUs. They're blowing out of the case rather than onto each other, that sort of a thing. Anyway, I hope you guys found this news video useful and interesting. I do have my RX 7600 versus RTX 4060 head-to-head comparison coming out within the next couple of days. But my content is probably going to slow down here for this next week because I have family coming in from out of the country for this, 4th of July, a little bit ahead of it and past it, all of that. So I'm going to take a bit of a slowdown on the channel as I spend time with family and all of that. But the 4060 and 7600 comparison video is still coming out probably within a couple days of this video. But then, like I said, probably not a video every single day like I usually post for at least the next week. I hope all of you have an excellent day.